Ayman Khan here for Seconds Out with Eddie Hearn. You can take a sip of your coffee if you like before we start. Not a problem at all, Eddie. Eddie, let's get into the talk for the fight card. Interesting prospect with a lot of fighters on the card, a lot of Brits on the card. As a man who can sell ice to Eskimos, as the phrase is it tough to sell a Brit to an American this day and age?
It is at 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning, but obviously, look, we know that Conor Benn, one of the biggest stars in the UK. And as you probably just heard in my other interview, some people will say, no, he's not. So, okay, tell me the bigger names in British boxing outside of Conor Benn. And you will say Tyson Fury, Anthony Joshua. After that, I'm pretty much lost. This guy is a huge star. He does massive numbers. And DAZN said, look, if we're going internationally, we want to make sure it's on UK time zone. So this is the first time a British fighter has headlined a Matchroom card in Las Vegas. And I'm proud of this kid. You know, I think it's a massive moment for him. You've seen his legacy, his father's legacy fight here against Iron Barkley and others as well. He's buzzing. You know, in terms of the card, you've got two really good fights on the undercard in Amo Williams and particularly Khalil Coe, two of our best young prospects. Johnny Fisher's got a good heavyweight tear-up. And then our young prospects, you know, coming over from the UK in George Lillard and Jimmy Sains, it's a massive opportunity for them. So 10:30 UK. Set your alarms and watch, in my opinion, one of the most exciting fighters pound for pound in the sport in Conor Benn.
Pick the one fighter outside of Benn that you feel is most likely to translate to this US audience.
Khalil Coe, you know, and Amo Williams. I mean, they're two young, undefeated American fighters. Khalil Coe is outstanding, and he's got a massive step up with Asuna, who's I think 24-0, something like that. Khalil Coe is a big ticket seller in New Jersey. He was a fantastic US amateur as well. I think he's going to be a future champion at 175 pounds. And I think they'll love Conor Benn. You know, this isn't necessarily a move on this Conor's second fight back-to-back in the US. We're not necessarily targeting winning over the US audience, but I think his style and his personality will do it. And a lot of the media he's had this week has been geared towards the US as well. And I think it's a big moment for him, profile perspective, and particularly in his career.
I thought you might have said Johnny Fisher, being that he's a heavyweight.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think, you know, Johnny Fisher, the reason I say that is because he's so targeted towards the UK. You know, we know he's got hundreds of people flying out here to watch him, and I think in time you're going to see him fight all over the world. But I think the US audience will love watching him. But he's a real UK fans' favourite as well.
Moving on to widening the scope. Speaking of the Benn and Dobson fight, Eubank Senior had his comments to say on TalkSport regarding the Benn and Dobson fight. And some fans, I feel, will probably feel the same way to a degree to what Eubank Senior's sentiments were regarding talking about fights with Terence Crawford and then the likes of Jaron Ennis, but then getting the likes of Pete Dobson. Do you feel there's any merit to what Eubank Senior said regarding Benn's career right now?
I mean, very rarely. I mean, he has nothing to do with Conor Benn's career. I mean, Eubank is always going to speak from an imbalanced view when it comes to Conor Benn, the Benn family, when it comes to me. So I think definitely if we're shouting out those big names and fighting Dobson, you have to destroy this guy. You have to go out there inside 4 or 5 rounds and absolutely knock him spark out. And if you struggle against Pete Dobson, how can you possibly stand there and say, we want Crawford, we want Boots? You've got to go and show yourself. But when you've got 5 weeks to go and you want to stay active, that's what we're doing. So Dobson's an undefeated fighter. He's a 154-pounder. He'll give it everything. But I'm expecting Conor Benn to smash him up. And, you know, Chris Eubank isn't involved with Chris Eubank Jr. anymore. He's involved with Harlem. And obviously now his whole mouthpiece is about pushing Harlem Eubank and trying to push Harlem into a fight with Conor. It just doesn't have any substance. You know, I need to make a big fight for Conor Benn, and that's not Harlem Eubank just yet. Who's a good young fighter, but you know, it's definitely not on the radar.
Speaking of big fights, you know Canelo Alvarez very well, and Eubank Senior was pushing for Canelo Alvarez and Chris Eubank Jr. In prospect, it sounds interesting, but do you think that Canelo Alvarez will be interested in that fight?
Probably not, but I like the fight. I don't mind it. I've always talked to, you know, when we were working with Chris Eubank Jr., I talked about the prospect of that fight. I think it's Eubank Jr. has plenty of nuts and guts. He had a good chin, and he'll always give you a great fight. So, look, I think Canelo is looking at the Benavidez's, the Charlos, the Munguias, but a fight with Eubank, I don't think it really resonates like you say in America, but if he ever wanted to come to the UK, yeah, that's a big fight.
Had a good chin?
I would never have expected him to get stopped by Liam Smith in his prime. And that's why I think Conor Benn flattens Chris Eubank Jr. And that is why I think Chris Eubank Jr. will not take the fight. Because if you look from a common sense perspective, when you have the opportunity to make 2 or 3 times more money fighting a welterweight 2 divisions below you than fighting a middleweight that might be a tougher fight and you still turn it down, why? Because I think Chris Eubank Jr. knows that Conor Benn is a threat. And Chris Eubank Jr. knows that Conor Benn could take him out. And if he got took out by Conor Benn, he's done. And he's not just done, but from a family point of view, the legacy, the history, it changes everything. So maybe I'm wrong. Prove me wrong. Prove me wrong, Chris Eubank Jr. Make the biggest fight in British boxing history against a man that is tiny compared to your colossal frame. 2 divisions lower than you. A stadium fight in the UK. One of the biggest the country has ever seen. Eubank v Benn. Come on, easy work, eh? Fortune. Let's do it.
Appreciate the impassioned speech, especially to the camera. It must be the coffee indeed, Eddie. Just a couple of final things for myself. I don't know if I asked this to you yesterday, so I'll ask it again just in case. Any movement on the undisputed fight between the light heavyweights? Are the WBC involved?
From our side, we've signed. So we have signed with Dmitry Bivol to fight Artur Beterbiev. I believe those conversations with His Excellency and Bob Arum are going positively. I'm very confident that fight gets made for the summer. We're in, and we hope Artur Beterbiev will be as well.
Can you say as to why the reason was the trigger was pulled on the litigious nature of the Boatsi case against Matchroom case against Boatsi? What was the reasoning for going down that route in the end?
Why did we do it? Because we believe absolutely, without any doubt, our contract was not honoured, and that will be decided in due course.
You had a conversation with Dana White. What were the elements of that conversation?
Just honestly, just always catch up with him when I'm in Vegas. I've been training, and the boys have been training at the UFC Performance Center, which is like, and I know this sounds a bit cheesy, but I don't mind saying it. Dana, the UFC, they are at the levels that I want to be as a promoter and as a business. And it's very inspirational to me to be around that kind of setup, to be around that kind of individual. So when he gives me an hour of his time, it's like gold dust for me, because I walk out there inspired. I know he gets a lot of stick and criticism, but the level that those guys operate is exactly the level where we want to be. And, he's always given me his time, which I appreciate greatly.
Why are Carl Froch and John Fury at such loggerheads? They seem like the similar sort of people.
I love it. And, Froch is a guy that's just ready to go at any moment. And the reason that I like that little bit of beef, right? 1 is because I'm not involved. And 2, because Carl's not the kind of geezer who you can start saying, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. And if I see you, because you can say that to me, I'm a wet lettuce. You can't say that to Carl Froch, because he'll stick it on you. Like, if those two come together, trust me when I say Carl Froch will stick it on him. But let's just play nice, because they are honestly both great. Like, Carl Froch is an absolute legend, and you can never question the credibility or the resume of Carl Froch. And one thing, Carl Froch is many things, all right? And he does have his faults, like we all do. But one thing Carl Froch is absolutely not is a shithouse, because that geezer is tough as nails, mate, and he won't back down from anyone. And I've always said that. Some people say to me, it all goes off in here or in a club. Who do you want by your side? There's probably 3 of them. Carl Froch, Tony Bellew, and AJ. These are 3 proper geezers that would never back down. And probably the only 3 that like me.
Very last one. Mike Tyson was calling for John Fury versus Joe Egan. I'm not sure who that is. For them to fight over it. Is there any legs in that? Have you heard anything about that? With Mike Tyson calling for it, he's got that influence.
Carl said that all these people keep wanting to fight John Fury, don't fight anyone. So, listen, I'm staying out of it. I've said my piece. I like John Fury. I think over the years, I've just learned to accept that John Fury is an entertainer. I've never really come face to face with him. I presume that he won't try and chin me. Hopefully not. John, if you're watching this, love you lots. But there's, like, when you say it to someone like Carl, it's just, when you accuse someone of being a shithouse or a coward in that world, it starts getting interesting. So, listen, I'm just watching from social media like a fan. Love it all.
Eddie, good conversation. Appreciate it.